Well, hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and it's another edition of the Blues Fix here on MisplacedStraws.com. And my guest today is one of three amazing guitar players that make up the band Texas Scratch. They have finally released their debut record, and it's filled not, there we go, and it's filled not only with incredible Texas guitar playing, but also just features some great songs as well. You may also recognize him from his post alongside George Thorogood, as he's been a destroyer since 1999. Please welcome Jim Suhler. Welcome, Jim.
Oh, thank you. I was expecting some musical fanfare, but maybe you can add that in post production.
Yeah, so we don't have the production budget for that, but in our
Hey,
heads, it's there. So now in Texas Scratch, you're joined by Buddy Whittington and Vince Converse on guitar, as well as fellow destroyer Jeff Simon on drums and Nathaniel Peterson on bass. So we'll get into the long history of the record in a minute, but before that, how did you, Buddy, and Vince first decide that this was something you wanted to do?
well, somebody else made that decision. It was a guy from Long Island, a music fan. He had his own label for a while, owned a record store in New York City. His name is Arnie Goodman. So he had a backer, and Arnie had the idea to put us together and do this album. Much like what Albert Collins and Johnny Copeland and Robert Cray did in the 80s with Showdown on Alligator Records. I think that was maybe his template. And we all knew each other already. So that part was easy, just getting together, But that's who was the impetus to put this together.
And then, we've kind of said a little bit in the intro and in the last question. It's taken a while to get this record out. You guys recorded it back in 2009. What's the history that it's finally coming out now?
Well, as I mentioned, there was a backer, and I think something happened with the backer. I wasn't really privy to a lot of to these conversations, so I'm trying to just piece it together. Um, Either he fell through, or whatever the label situation they had in place fell through. So at that point, it was shelved, and the idea was they were shopping it, and we'll get something soon. And then it just sort of snowballed, and you look up, it's been a couple of years, and then it's 5 years, and then I think we all just kind of gave up and figured, well, it's just going to be shelved. And I know Buddy had even gone on to record a couple of the songs we did for another project that he had done. So lo and behold, earlier this year, I'm sitting in a restaurant and I'm scrolling through my Instagram feed, and I see that the record's been released digitally, which was news to me. None of us been informed of it. So we really didn't have anything. We had to kind of hustle to put some shows together and put together whatever promotional angle we were going to do. But having said that, I'm really happy it's finally seen a light of day. I still feel good about the record. I'm really proud to be associated with it. And these guys were great to work with. It was so easy.
Well, one interesting thing about the record, I think, is that when you listen to it now, it doesn't sound like it was recorded 14 years ago. It still sounds good. It sounds modern. Do you know if they did anything in post production, or is this exactly what you guys had recorded back then?
We recorded it in about 4 days, and then I did some overdubs, like some keyboard stuff. Once I got back to Dallas, I did that. I sort of oversaw that. And then it was sent off and it was mixed and mastered. But there's really nothing like production wise on it that's going to date the record,
Mhm.
like maybe a wah pedal would from the 70s, or a vocoder.
Mhm.
Uh, no auto tune. So I mean, in that sense, production wise,
Yeah.
it doesn't have any of those things that would say, oh, this came out so in a certain period. Uh, it still sounds fresh to me. I think the idea is just to have good songs,
Mhm.
and we were never like hopping on trends anyway. I mean, if we had, we would have hopped on something that would have made us a lot more money than blue. Um, but yeah, that was the process.
And now, have you guys, after it was recorded in 2009, have you done anything as a band since then? Have you guys played any shows, prior to this re-release? talked about recording a follow-up, or was it just, okay, we did that, it's done?
I believe in 2010 or 11, we did like Arnie, the guy that put us together, the Long Island Svengali, booked us on a couple of festivals in Canada, the Windsor Blues Festival and the London, Ontario Blues Festival. So we did those as a
Mm-hmm.
group. Waiting, we thought the record might be out and never, that was what, like 12 years ago. And, but no, we never did anything else after that. We waited, we didn't consider doing any other recordings because this hadn't even come out yet. So we didn't want to do a follow up to a record that hadn't been released yet.
Mm-hmm.
It was really never even discussed or considered, to my knowledge.
Now, you guys, the three of you are all Texas players, but you have really different styles when it comes to blues and rock. What was it like for you to kind of play on the songs that were brought in or written by the other guys? Did you sort of adapt a little to their style? Did you bring all three of yours together?
Well, my mo for all that is always the same. I just try to listen before I do anything, then find a part and stick with it, not step on anybody else's part, not showboat or hot dog. Just
Hmm.
try to find something suitable for the song because that's really what we're after. Uh, but yeah, I mean, we all are sympathetic. It's just like talking to somebody with a different accent. I mean, Texas is a gigantic state. There's different accents in different part of the states, musical and lingual. So, I mean, I can still understand the guys and they can understand me. I mean, that would be the best analogy I could give you. But yeah, everybody is seasoned and we've done this a lot and everybody knew the drill. So it wasn't too difficult.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned just sort of the different styles throughout Texas. I think the blues in general has a million different styles, but then Texas is always its own thing. And I mean, your track Texas Trio kind of shouts out some of the legends in the genre down there. But in your opinion, I mean, what is the heart of Texas blues? What makes up just all of those things?
Well, I don't, I'm sure I don't, but Buddy might agree, and Vince. I don't want to speak for them, but I don't really I mean, the blues. I'm more of a blues interpreter. I'm not a. I mean, Sun Seals or Buddy Guy or somebody like that would be a blues artist. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I interpret it, and I've got a lot of other influences. But back to your question, I think there's a swagger to it, a particular swing. I mean, it wasn't like in its early years, it wasn't like Mississippi blues, which was a little more primitive. Texas blues, maybe 80 years ago, always had horns, or a lot
Mm-hmm.
of it. There were outliers like Lightning Hopkins and Texas Alexander, and later Little Son Jackson, guys that did that kind of back porch stuff. But it was always maybe a little more sophisticated musically than a lot of the stuff from Chicago in the early years, which was more guitars and harmonicas. I mean, like T-Bone Walker always had a horn section, of varying sizes. But maybe it's an attitude thing, I guess, a confidence. I don't, I think that's probably the closest I can come to describing it.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you see Texas Scratch as just kind of a moment in time, or now that the record's out, do you think that, okay, maybe we'll do a couple of shows around the area, or is it done, or is it just beginning?
Well, I think the jury's out. I mean, we're doing some shows, Buddy and I, that we do have some geographical challenges. Buddy and I are in the same area, Dallas and Fort Worth, and live about 35 miles
Mm.
apart. But Vince lives in Denver now. Jeff Simon lives in suburban Philadelphia.
Mm.
Sadly, the bass player Nathaniel passed away this year, and he was living in Italy.
Oh.
So right now, we're just doing some things. Buddy and I can just go out and play some gigs locally and promote the record. And the idea is to go out and do some festivals this year. I'd been waiting for a lot of the George Thorogood touring
Mm.
windows solidified before made those overtures to reach out to people to play festivals, because it's no good if I book something and then they schedule a tour.
Yeah.
Then I've got a problem. But yeah, the idea is that we'd like it to be the beginning, and the record's off to a good start, and we feel good about it going forward.
Mm. And you mentioned George Thorogood. You've been with him since '99. Jeff Simon was an original Destroyer way back when. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I caught you guys live in August on the bill up here in Connecticut with fellow Texan ZZ Top.
Oh
And
well, yeah.
that was an amazing night, I gotta say. And it was probably the first time I saw George in 25 or 30 years. And you guys just blew me away. It's like, it's not necessary that you forget about all those songs, but seeing you guys live, there was such an energy, there was such a joy coming from the stage with you guys on it. How did you first hook up with George?
I met him in Memphis in 1990. I had a band, and I was playing at Huey's. They would book road bands on Sunday nights. So we I don't remember where else we may have played on that trip,
Mm,
probably some Arkansas, but I mean nobody was getting rich. It was like $400, no rooms. You
mm,
know, there were four of us, and we were glad to get it. But they were recording at Ardent Studios, which was about a block or two away, doing an album called Boogie People. So they finished their session that day and came in that night for food and some drinks and stuff. And they were smoking cigars. It was back when you could smoke in a bar. I wasn't aware that they were there, but we finished the first set, and somebody told me, "Hey, George and the Destroyers are here." So I was a fan, and I went over and introduced myself, and they were cool. And then we played the second set, and I noticed George kept getting closer and closer and closer, and
mm,
finally standing like 6 or 8 feet
mm,
away from me watching. And it was like, is this really happening? I just, I hadn't really, I was just still trying to get my whole thing together at that
mm,
point. So it was kind of blowing my mind. But he was very, after we finished, he was really encouraging. And, I could tell he had listened, because he was bringing out a lot of really detailed things I had done in my show
mm,
musically. Like I used to play the lick from "Please Please Me" by the Beatles
mm.
during our during "Not Fade Away," the Buddy Holly
Yeah.
song. So he thought that was cool. In fact, he still mentions that from time to time.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, then he hooked me up with his producer Terry Manning. He said my producer Terry would love you guys. So like a year or so later, I had a different band, and I was going to do a project, and I said, well, why not send something to Terry? Maybe he would engineer it or help us, or I was just trying to get out of Dallas at that point. So so much to my surprise, Terry agreed to do the record. So let me see if I can condense this. We ended up doing a few records for Terry's label, Lucky Seven, which is a Rounder record subsidiary who George was signed with in his early years, and went out and opened a bunch of tour dates for George for a few years. And that sort of like ran its course by 95, 96. And then in late 98, they called and said, we're hiring another guitar player. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I've been doing both ever since.
mm,
So I've had a full plate for the last 25 years.
mm. It, I gotta ask, I mean, are you guys having as much fun as it looks on stage? Because I was able to photograph that show, and I'm looking back at the pictures, and you guys have the biggest smiles while you're playing, and you really look like you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Mm,
If you're not having fun, then you better like rethink
mm,
everything. I mean, you're really getting to live your dream. It,
mm,
it's there's always something fun about it. I'll think of something funny to say. I mean, we say the
mm,
most ridiculous things to each other up on stage too.
mm.
I won't go into that, but yeah, we're all still having fun. And if it's not fun, I know we wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah. And now, in addition to Texas Scratch and Thorogood, you have a bunch of other projects. You have your band Monkey Beat. What does 2024 look like for you schedule wise? Do you already have things planned out in advance, or are you just kind of waiting to see what goes on with the Thorogood project?
I just have some club dates booked in the
Mm,
Texas area right now for the first quarter of the year, and then I'm
mm,
waiting to see where a lot of the where the dust settles, because I think they were waiting on some confirmations on a couple of packages they were doing, like with
Mhm.
another band thing. So I did a recording with Tyler Bryant. Are you familiar with
Yep.
Tyler Bryant?
The Shakedown. Yep.
Great player, and he's from my area, and I've known him since he was probably 12.
Mhm.
He's in Nashville, and I went to Nashville oh, months ago, and we wrote and recorded a single at his home studio called Dusty Groove, and his lovely wife Rebecca from Larkin Poe is singing on it.
Mhm.
And right now the plan is to go back and cut another one or two songs and do a 7-inch vinyl release for his label Rattleshake.
Mhm.
And so I'm doing that. We had just put a single out called Get Your Head Right,
Mhm.
which I did here in the Dallas area. It's produced by Casey DiOrio. And yeah, continuing to write and get some stuff together. I'm going to send Tyler some new songs today, in fact.
Mhm.
So that's
Great.
on the.
Well, we've been spending some time here with Jim Suhler. The band and the record is Texas Scratch. It's out now. It's a great record. It's a fun record. I got to say that. Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. And we'll have to do this again soon.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff, and I hope you have a wonderful 2024.
You as well, my friend. Thanks.
All right, brother.